Chapter 5 of Martha by the Day by Julie M. Lippmann. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5. All that day Martha held herself in readiness to answer at headquarters for what she had done. "He'll sure tell his mother, the young villain," said Eliza, "and then it'll be Mrs. Slosson for the grand bounce." But Mrs. Slosson did not worry. She went about her work as usual, and when, in the course of her travels, she met Radcliffe, she greeted him as if nothing had happened. "Say, did you know that Sammy has a dog?" No answer. "It's a funny kind of dog. If you begged your head off, I'd never tell you where he came from." "Where did he come from? Didn't you hear me say I'd never tell you?" "I do know. He just picked Sammy's father up on the street and followed him home, for all the world the same as he'd been a Christian." "What kind of a dog is he?" "Cur dog." "What kind's that?" "Well, a full-blooded cur dog is something rare in these parts. You wouldn't find him at an ordinary dog show like your mother goes to. Now, Sammy's dog is full-blooded, leastways he will be when he's fed up." "My mother's dog is a pedigree dog. Is Sammy's that kind?" "I ain't asked him, but I shouldn't wonder." "My mother's got a paper, tells all about where Fifi came from. It's in a frame." "Fifi is?" "No, the paper is. The paper says Fifi's out of a Deller, sired by Star. I heard her read it off to a lady that came to see her one day. Say, Martha, what's a Deller?" "I don't know." "Fifi has awful long ears. What kind of ears has Sammy's dog got?" "I didn't notice particular, I must say, but he's got two of 'em, and they can stand up and lay down real natural like according to taste, the dog's taste, which wouldn't be no ways remarkable if it was his tongue, but is what I call extraordinary, seeing it's his ears. And his tail's the same, excepting it has even more education still. It can wag, besides standing up and laying down. Ain't that pretty smart for a pup that probably didn't have no raising to speak of, less you count raising on the toe of somebody's boot?" "Do you mean anybody kicked him?" "Well, you ain't said so in so many words, but I draw my own conclusions. He's an honourable, gentlemanlike dog. He keeps his own counsel. If it so happened that he'd need to be punished at any time, he'd bear it like a little man and hold his tongue. You don't catch a real thoroughbred whining." "I wish I could see Sammy's dog." "Well, perhaps you can, but I'll tell you confidential, I wouldn't like Flicker to associate with none but the best class of boys. I'm going to see he has a fine line of friends from this time on, and if Sammy ain't what he'd oughter be, why he just can't mix with Flicker, that's all there is to it." "Who gave him that name?" "His sponsors in baptism. Oh, hear me reciting the catechism. I'm such a good 'Piscopalian I just can't help it. A little lady friend of mine gave him that name, 'cause he flickers round so like a little yeller flame. Did I mention his colour was yeller? That alone would show he's a true breed cur dog. Say, I forgot. My mother, she sent me down to tell you she wants to see you right away up in her sitting room. I guess you better go quick." Mrs. Slosson ceased plying her polishing cloth upon the hardwood floor, sat back upon her heels, and calmly gathered her utensils together. "Say, my mother, she said tell you she wanted to see you right off for something particular. Ain't you going to hurry?" "Sure I am, certainly. You don't look as if you was hurrying." "When you get to be a big boy and have a teacher to learn your knowledge, you'll find that large bodies moves slowly. I didn't have as much schooling as I'd like, but what I learned I remember, and I put it into practice. That's where the use of books comes in, to be put in practice. Now, I'm a large body, and if I tried to move fast I'd be going against what's printed in the books, which would be wrong. Still, if a lady sends for me post haste, why, of course I makes an exception and answers in the same spirit. So long, see you later." Radcliffe had no mind to remain behind. Something subtly fascinating in Martha seemed to draw him after her, and he followed on upstairs, swinging himself athletically along, hand over hand, upon the baluster rail almost at her heels. "Say, don't you wonder what it is my mother's going to say to you?" he demanded disingenuously. Mrs. Slosson shook her head. "Wonderin' is a habit I broke myself off of when I wasn't knee-high to a grasshopper," she replied. "I take things as they come, not to mention as they go. Either way suits me, and anyhow I don't wonder about 'em. If it's something good, why it'll keep, and if it's something bad, wonderin' won't make it any better. So what's the use?" "Guess I'll go on up and see my grandmother in her room," observed Radcliffe casually as they reached Mrs. Sherman's door. "I won't go in here with you." "Dear me, how sorry I am," Martha returned with feeling. "I'd kinder counted on you for what they calls moral support, that being the kind the male gender is mainly good for these days. But of course, if you ain't been invited, it wouldn't be genteel for you to press yourself. I can understand your feelings. They does credit to your head and to your heart. As I said before, so long. See you later." The door having closed her in, Radcliffe lingered aimlessly about outside. Without, of course, being able to analyse it, he felt as if some rare source of entertainment had been withdrawn from him, leaving life flat and tasteless. He felt like being what his mother called fractious. But, he remembered as in a flash, you never catch a thoroughbred whining, and he snapped his jaws together with manly determination. At Martha's entrance, Mrs. Sherman glanced up languidly from the book she was reading and inquired with pointed irony, "You didn't find it convenient to come to me directly I sent for you, did you, Martha?" Mrs. Slosson closed the door behind her gently, then stood planted like some massive caryatid supporting the frame. Something monumental in the effect of her presence made the question just flung at her seem petty, impudent, and Mrs. Sherman hastened to add more considerately, "But I sent Radcliffe with my message. No doubt he delayed." "No'm," admitted Martha. "He told me all right enough, but I was in the middle of polishing. It took me a minute or two to get my things collected, and then it took me a couple more to get me collected. But better late than never, as the saying goes, which, by the same token, I don't believe it's always true." There was not the faintest trace of apology or extenuation in her tone or manner. If she had any misgivings as to the possibility of Radcliffe's having complained, she gave no evidence of it. "What I want to say is this," announced Mrs. Sherman autocratically, making straight for the point. "I absolutely forbid anyone in my household to touch—" Martha settled herself more firmly on her feet and crossed her arms with unconscious dignity upon her bosom, bracing herself against the coming blow. "I absolutely forbid anyone in my household to touch the new marble slabs and nickel fittings in my dressing rooms with cleaning stuffs containing acids after this. I have gone to great expense to have the house remodelled this summer, and the bathrooms have all been tiled and fitted up afresh from beginning to end. I know that in the past you've used acid, gritty soaps on the basins and tubs, Martha, and my plumber tells me you mustn't do it. He says it's ruinous. He recommends kerosene oil for the bathtubs and marble slabs. He says it will take any stain out and is much safer than the soaps. So please use kerosene to remove the stains." Mrs. Slosson relaxed. Without the slightest hint of incivility, she interrupted cheerfully, "And does your plumber mention what'll remove the stink, I should say odour, of the kerosene?" Mrs. Sherman laughed. "Dear me, no, I'm afraid that's up to you, as Radcliffe says." "Oh, I ain't no doubt it can be done, and even if it can't, the smell of kerosene is healthy, and you wouldn't mind a faint whiff of it now and then clinging to you, coming out of your bath, would you? Or, if you did, you might set over against the oil smell one of them strong bath powders that's like the perfumery counter in a department store broke loose, and let 'em fight it out between 'em. To my way of thinking, it'd be a tie, and no thanks to your nose. Well, I only follow the plumber's directions. He guarantees his work and materials, but he says acids will roughen the surface of anything, enamel or marble, or whatever it may be. I'm sure you'll be careful in the future. Now I've spoken, and how are you getting on these days? How are you and your husband and the children? Tolerable, thank you. Sammy, my husband, he ain't been earning as much as usual lately, but I says to him, when he's downhearted like because he can't hand out the price of the rent, say, you ain't fished up much of anything certainly, but count your blessings. You ain't fell in the river either, and be this and be that, we make out to get along. We never died a winter yet. Dear me, I should think a great strapping man ought to be able to support his family without having to depend on his wife to go out by the day. My husband does his best, said Martha with simple dignity. He does his best, but things goes contrary with some, no doubt of that. Oh, the thought of the day would not bear you out there, I assure you. Mrs. Sherman took her up quickly. Science teaches us that our condition in life reflects our character. We get the results of what we are in our environment. You understand? In other words, each receives his desert. I hope I'm clear? I mean, what he deserves. Martha smiled, a slow, calm, tolerant smile. You are perfectly clear, she said reassuringly. Only I ain't been educated up to seeing things that way. Seems to me, if everybody got their deserts, as you call it, some of them that's feeding so expensive now at the grand hotels wouldn't have a square meal. It's the ones that ain't earned 'em, having the square meal and the dessert, that puts a good man like my Sammy out of a job. But that's neither here nor there. It's all bound to come right some day. Only meanwhiles I wish living wasn't so high. What with good steak 28 cents a pound, and it's being as much as your life is worth to even ask the price of fresh vegetables, it takes some contriving to get along. Not to speak of potatoes 25 cents the half peck, and every last one of my family is fond of 'em as if they was fresh from Ireland, instead of skipping a generation on both sides. But my good woman, exclaimed Mrs. Sherman, shocked, what do you mean by talking of porterhouse steak and fresh vegetables this time of year? Oughtn't you to economize? Isn't it extravagant for you to use such expensive cuts of meat? I'm sure there are others that are cheaper, more suited to your income. Certainly there is. Chuck steak is cheap. Chuck steak's so cheap that about all it costs you is a few cents to the butcher, and the price of the store teeth you need, after you've broke your own trying to chew it. But, you see, my notion is to try to give my family the sort of stuff that's nourishing, not just something to eat, but food. I don't believe their stomachs realize they belong to poor folks. I'm not envying the rich, mind you. Dear no, I wouldn't be hired to clutter up my insides with the messes I see going up to the tables of some I work for. Cocktails, and entries, and foodie de gras, and such like. No, I believe in real, straight nourishment, the things that builds up your bones and gives you red blood and good muscle, so's you can hold down your job and hold up your head. I believe in paying for that kind of food if I do have to work for it. Mrs. Sherman took up the book she had dropped at Martha's entrance. You certainly are a character, she observed. Thank you, ma'am, said Martha. Oh, and by the way, before you go, I want you to see that Mr. Ronald's rooms are put in perfect order today. I don't care to trust it to the girls, but you have one of them to help you if you like, provided you are sure to oversee her. You know how particular I am about my brother Frank's rooms. Be sure nothing is neglected. Yes'm, said Martha. End of chapter 5. Read by Sandra.